Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the brand new Avatar metagame. Today I'm checking out this mono blue and colorless ramp deck built around Planetarium of 1 Tong, a 6 mana legendary artifact, can pay 1 mana, tap it and then scry 2, and whenever we scry or surveil we get to look at the top card of our library and we may cast that card without paying its mana cost. That effect only happens once each turn, so we can potentially use it in our turn and then once again in the opponent's turn. Also, to clarify, you get to cast a card for free after you finish scrying or surveilling, so you can sort of manipulate whichever card ends up on top, so you have a bit more selection over which hopefully expensive card you get to cast for free. And of course, finishers that we're hoping to play for free in this deck include Sire of 7 Deaths, a 7/7 with 7 different keywords, and it also has lifelink as well as reach, so it's very good at protecting us from opposing aggro decks, and then also functions as a very good win condition. With Vigilance we can attack and still have it back on defense, and then Menace, First Strike and Trample also make it difficult for the opponent to block, and if they try to remove it they still have to pay 7 life to its ward ability, at which point we could still maybe bounce it with our own bounce spell to save it from said removal spell using Unauthorized Exit, which is a 2 mana instant, can return any target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and we also get to surveil 1, and that's a common theme throughout this deck as we have plenty of scry and surveil effects to get the most out of our Planetarium. And then Ugin, another amazing curve topper in this deck full of colorless spells, so we can keep enabling its passive ability, where now if we cast a colorless spell we get to exile up to 1 target permanent, that's 1 or more colors. And then we can use Ugin to draw cards, gain life, or add additional mana, which is a great way to once again cast more colorless spells to enable its passive. If we ever get to ultimate, we can search up any colorless spells in our deck and cast them for free. Then of course we do need a few ramp cards to get to 6 and 7 mana in the first place, and we can start ramping on turn 2 using the Iron Crag. It is legendary, so I'm only playing 1 copy, but I'm playing the full set of the UFO, an 0/4 flyer that can tap to put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield. It enters untapped, so a turn 2 UFO could set up 4 mana on turn 3, at which point we can start casting some of our other ramp cards, such as the Hedron Archive, which can also immediately tap for double colorless, which we can often still use, and the Ring, another legendary artifact that taps for double colorless, can also maybe tap opposing a non-land permanence down. And we're also playing 3 copies of the new Bender's Waterskin, which is a 3 mana ramp artifact making a mana of any color, but we also get to untap it during each other player's untap step. And this deck has quite a few instants and other activated abilities that we can activate in the opponent's turn, so the extra mana from Waterskin actually comes in handy quite often. And one of those activated abilities includes the Maze Mind Tome, 2 mana to play, can immediately tap it to scry 1, which is very convenient with a Planetarium, since we can just tap our Tome and then potentially cast another spell for free off the top of the deck. And then we can also pay 2 mana to simply draw a card, so that's where the extra mana from our Waterskin will come in handy. Once we deplete all the counters, we exile the Tome and gain 4 life. And then rounding out the deck, we also have the full set of Opt to scry 1 and then draw a card. Now here it's a little awkward with a Planetarium, since we'll draw the card that we scried into, and then the Planetarium will trigger, so we don't really have any control over what card we get to cast for free, but it's still a nice cheap way to trigger Planetarium in the opponent's turn as well. And then we also have the 2 copies of Aetherize as another bounce spell for opposing creature aggro decks, especially the green decks that are now popular with the Badger Mole Cub that will tend to earthbend a lot of their lands. We now, if they attack, get to bounce all those lands back to the opponent's hand as well, so that can also buy us a lot of extra time, and especially when paired with cards like Sire and Ugin, can help us control the game, because we can maybe even wait for the opponent to attack into our Sire with all their creatures, let First Strike damage happen first, gain 7 life, maybe take out a creature, and then still cast our Aetherize afterwards. Aetherize also the reason why you sometimes want to wait for the opponent to be attacking before scrying or surveilling in the opponent's turn with your Planetarium, so you can still successfully cast your Aetherize. And then the mana base has 10 basic islands. We also have 4 copies of Adventures Inn as a town that gains 2 life when it enters. Towns are also a relevant subtype when it comes to the UFO, can occasionally increase its power that way. And then we also have a few deserts with Conduit Pylons surveilling when it enters, so yet another way to trigger Planetarium. as well as Arid Archway, which is one of these bounce lanes, so it makes 2 mana, but it enters tapped, and we have to return a land we own back to our hand when it enters. So this is also quite synergistic with our UFO, since that means we'll have more lands in hand that we can keep putting in play with the UFO, while still increasing our overall mana count with Archway tapping for 2. And if we returned a desert, we also get to surveil 1 once again, so picking up the pylons is great, picking up the Adventures Inn to once again gain 2 life is also quite nice. And then a late addition to the deck is the Secluded Starforge. This is mainly here for the very controlling matchups where the opponent might be able to answer all our win conditions, get rid of all our sires with various board wipes. Maybe they don't care about Ugin all that much. Then it's still nice to have a land with an activated ability to make additional creature tokens, and occasionally we can also tap some of our artifacts to increase a creature's power, so then we can also turn our UFO into a bigger threat, or maybe pump up our life-linking sire even more. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand is functional, might need a few more mana sources, but we've got a decent amount of interaction to prolong the game. Turn 1. Could be convinced to just play Adventures Inn, turn 2 Archway, get it out of the way, and then turn 3 I can play the Water Skin. And then it's going to be pretty easy to deploy my instance once we have the Water Skin in play, since we can just keep on tapping it. I guess the only drawback of this play is that I have to discard to hand size. So, yeah, maybe there were other options available, but an island can go. Their opponent green-white. Some sort of tokens deck. Paw Patch with Offspring. Well, Aetherize is certainly going to have its moments in this matchup. So now I could still opt and then untap Water Skin, maybe even opt again in the opponent's turn. Do I need a Conduit Pylons? Yeah, it's not bad. Can play the island first, maybe save the Surveil until after I play Planetarium. Ideally draw one of my 4 mana ramp cards here. Well, opponent's not wasting any time with a turn 4 Ouroboros. So definitely need to keep up Aetherize. If I tap my Water Skin, I can play another one and then still have Aetherize available. I guess I could have gotten punished by removal on Water Skin before they attack. Send those packing. So next turn I could Planetarium activate. And the great thing is I can go Planetarium, play the pylons, get the trigger, and then still have a mana left to activate in the opponent's turn. We get to untap the Water Skins as well, so those can still cast Unauthorized Exit. So I'm looking for some expensive spell here, ideally. Island's not quite it. Alright, I mean, I guess I still activate now, because with the Water Skins I'll be able to exit, which also surveils. So I could take a free Mazemind Tome. And that's another way to scry and trigger Planetarium as well. So we'll wait and see what they do here. Enduring Innocence resolves. Still looking to bounce Ouroboros, which they now cannot recast. Alright, so that would draw them a card. And then I would like a spell I get to cast for free. I'll take Water Skin. Can still scry with a tome. Set an upkeep stop as well. Seam Rip. I guess gets rid of the tome now. so may as well use it. And an opt is another way to trigger Planetarium, although I don't think I'm going to struggle to do so. So let's just look for some of our finishers now. Take 3. So nothing to do in upkeep. Unless I suppose I wanted to scry with Planetarium, but yeah, we'll start here. Another Planetarium is just basically gonna let me scry 2 again and dig a little bit deeper. I guess that's fine. Should also be tapping the water skins, because those will untap anyways. Can go Iron Crag, Maze Mind Tome, or maybe first we get another look at Planetarium, maybe hit an Ugin so I can start exiling stuff. There we go, and an exit afterwards seems fine. Cast my free Ugin. And then exile, doesn't matter, Enduring Innocence. I'm gonna end up exiling everything anyway. Still have a bunch of mana available, so I can Iron Crag, exile Recruit, Maze Mind Tome, exile the token, even get my other Maze Mind Tome back. And yeah, just like that, Planetarium can take over. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a functional hand. The UFO has Archway to go with it, so we have more lands to put in play. And then we can ramp into Archive, which hopefully ramps out our 7s. Start by gaining some life. Facing blue-red, could be some sort of lesson deck or prowess aggro. They shouldn't have too many ways to deal with a 4 toughness creature. But we'll see. So currently I would not be able to cast Hedron Archive next turn unless I draw another untapped land. But I can play Archway, pick up Adventures in, and then put it in with the UFO. Opponent's not even going to bother attacking. Alright, now with the Pylons, I could play the Archive, although my opponent is keeping up mana, so there's a chance they have a counterspell. I think I still go for the Pylons, see what's on top. And then I can use the Archway to maybe pick up the Pylons. Ring isn't bad if they counter the Archive. So I'll keep it on top, and then have to activate it now. So if the Archive gets dealt with, it's not the end of the world. My opponent did have a counterspell as it turns out. So glad I still have another 4 mana ramp card coming up. Talent could level up to get 3 steps back, but then they would be tapped out. Opponent does accumulate wisdom, so they are running the lesson package. Can eventually turn into a draw 3. Well, I'm just gonna try this again. That resolves. Play Archway, and I think I pick up Pylons over Adventures in, since this is a desert, so we would get to Surveil. And then another Archive at this point seems overkill. But I can activate the UFO, even at instant speed, to put in another Pylons. So then next turn, we have a few options, including Ugin. Would be good to exile the talent before they level it up. Opponent's gonna Firebending Lesson with Kicker to take out the UFO. Happy to see that. And Adventures in doesn't seem necessary. Okay. So take 2. Resolve Ugin. Exile your talents. Even though the Otter token could deal some damage here, Just gonna increase my loyalty. And then next turn we can potentially generate some mana to get a Planetarium or Sire into play. So we're happy playing a long game. Opponent does have another talent. The UFO also represents another Ugin trigger to exile something. So our opponent's between a rock and a hard place. Still gotta attack Ugin. I get to untap. And then this might be a mana turn. Start by playing maybe the Planetarium. See what the response is. Exile the talents. Opponent does have the counter. That's okay. Talent still exiled. And then I still get to play the UFO. Exile an Otter. And then I'll probably save the opt to activate Planetarium in the opponent's turn as well. Alright, technique my UFO, that's fine. It's 2 mana to activate the ring, so I won't be able to do that. Opponent's down to 2 cards in hand, so they'll need a few of these accumulate wisdoms to catch back up. Now I might be interested in increasing the amount of loyalty on Ugin, so it doesn't get burnt out. Start with another Planetarium, see if that resolves. Opponent with another 3 steps, fair enough. And then I could play Maze Mine Tome. And next turn Sire should be the final nail. Alright, opponent will draw 3 now. So that still gives him a chance. Don't know if any of these target planeswalkers. This is only creature. Can scry. Don't particularly need the in. I'll just take my draw step. Ugin will just keep on plussing. Cast Sire. And then I can still main phase an opt here to maybe hit a land drop. Gonna save the Iron Crag as an extra Ugin trigger in case we need it. Take the pylons. And another Sire is perfect. There could be a world where my opponent runs me out of win conditions if they can remove the Sire with more combustion techniques. Although it is 7 life each time, there's 3 in the deck. And having to target the Sire twice means 14 damage. So yeah, they're not gonna get there. Okay. Opponent falls to 6, finding the good fight. And here's another one. Can ultimate Ugin next turn if I'd like. Okay, that's probably good enough. Alright, and there we go, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a slightly awkward hand. Since my second land is Archway, so then I don't get to play Tome. But I'll have 3 mana, can scry towards a 4th, and then we're off to the races. So it's not perfect, but I also get to gain a bunch of life to pad my life total against aggro. Turn 1 swamp. Do we see a duress? Intimidation tactics. Well, that can get rid of any of my artifacts. Or the sire cannot take Ugin, at least. Takes the tome as my only cheap play. Fair enough. Alright, so really hoping to hit some more land drops. Now a duress can take my 4-mana ramp card, draw a Planetarium in the meantime. If these discard spells aren't backed up by early pressure, we'll eventually draw out of it. But we'll see. Next turn I can archive, which would set up my bigger plays. Now Preacher. Okay, so next turn, still hoping for a land, so I can have access to 7 mana. If not, Planetarium will be good enough. Mono Black's not gonna have answers to artifacts once they're in play. Talent, discard, probably the archive. Don't expect Sire to necessarily survive, but we'll still give it a chance. Play the Planetarium. So we're not under too much pressure yet. Sanctuary's gonna get busy. That one's a little harder for me to remove, because it's colorless, but the UFO could block it. Now an authorized exit, also a way to trigger Planetarium, but first let's just activate and see what we get. A backup Planetarium isn't super exciting, so let's just bottom both, I think. I mean, I could get another Planetarium scry again, and then we get the effect a second time. But let's see if we can hit one of our 7s instead. Just a land on top. Okay, so play UFO as a turn. Probably gonna bounce Preacher before it attacks. Alright, now I guess we bounce a wall. It's a lot of mana for them to redeploy. Although I guess I can wait for it to attack. Maybe I surveil into an Aetherize, so I can bounce their other creatures as well. Alright, another Planetarium, which I can play and still activate. And how about a Sire out of nowhere? This is pretty epic. This might be game over. Untap. Still can't quite play Ugin. Now Opt is another way to scry in the opponent's turn. Let's take the Tome, can play and draw. I mean, exit would be fine too at this point, but maybe I want to hit an extra land drop. Alright, so next turn I can finally cast Ugin, although we may not need it anymore, depending on whether they can answer Sire. There's another one waiting in the wings. Bitter Triumph, discard Long Goodbye, pay the ward, and then I might want to opt now. If I hit an authorized exit, I can bounce my own Sire, which would be pretty neat. So it's going to be first we draw, and then we get a card at random. And another opt. So let's see. Yeah, I guess if I play this for free, I don't get to play anything else for free this turn, but I could still draw into the exit and just cast it. We did not. I guess I can still, yeah, activate the UFO, sack Archive to draw 2, but then I wouldn't have any mana left. So that happens, opponent's still at 8. Yeah, if they have a sweeper like Cover-Up and can extract all the sires out of my deck, that would be an issue. Unholy Annex is gonna get exiled. Although it will drain for 2 first, since they already control a demon. Opponent's on empty. So put in a land. Could sack the Archive, but I'm not gonna. Could use the extra mana. Okay, so step 1, play Ugin. Exile the Annex. We'll just draw a card here. Then I can use Planetarium. Cast a free Water Skin, which will also trigger Ugin. Exile your Demon Wall, maybe. And our opponent scoops it up. We can still activate Maze Mind Tome in the opponent's turn to enable Planetarium once again. And that's game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. No blue mana yet, unless we filter it with pylons, but don't need to opt on turn 1. Can maybe start by gaining 2, get a bit more info on the matchup and on our next draw step, before we decide what to do with the Surveil, turn to UFO, and then Archway picking up pylons could also let us scry, or rather Surveil an additional time. Yeah, that seems fine. Courtyard on allies, so it's the ally aggro deck. So their opponent's gonna put a lot of creatures in play. Finding Aetherize to bounce their stuff would be good. Don't expect a lot of creature removal, so the UFO should be safe. Prioritize the desert for Archway purposes. Do I want another Archway on top? It's not a bad card to have, but I think I'm looking for something else, because we already have a lot of mana. I may need some card draw, whether it's Maze Mind Tome, and I could also use some more interaction, one of our bounce effects. An untapped land would also let me cast one of my 4-drops next turn. A Voyager gets to immediately draw a card. Don't care about the life gain too much. And we found a bounce spell. So this turn, I guess we just play the Archway. I guess I can put the Archway and play at instant speed, so I can for now still cast Unauthorized Exits. Don't need a second UFO. Because yeah, we can still filter mana with Conduit Pylons, for instance, which allows me to cast Exits. Great Divide Guide would let their creatures immediately tap for mana. So I can either bounce the Voyager now, so they only have 3 mana left, or I can try and bounce the Guide, but not before they have access to 4 mana, so it's pretty easy for them to redeploy. I guess we'll bounce the Voyager. And then another Archway. At this point I don't mind, just to have more lands to put in play with the UFO. Of course, bouncing the token would also be reasonable, since we get rid of it for good. Opponent may have another reinforcement they can cast at instant speed. Can pick up the inn, since we know our top card, so I don't need to surveil again. Now I can cast one of these. Okay, and then pass it back. UFO activates again, probably picking up the inn once again. And then next turn I should be able to cast Ugin to try and stabilize. Opponent had Aang, also makes sense of course. Surprised I didn't bother airbending the ring here. It's gonna airbend their own reinforcements so they get to redeploy it later. That's fine. So if I cast Opt, I can look for more cheap colorless spells to trigger Ugin. Reinforcements plus Protesters to give all things haste with the mana from Divide Guide is incredibly scary. So yeah, this could be a problem. So our opponent can sort of go off, keep playing more creatures out. Don't have an actual board wipe. Only a way to bounce their stuff. I mean, an Aetherize would still be pretty good here. If we can find one. Protectors is fine. We're not going to destroy anything. So indestructible doesn't matter. But yeah, opponent's going off. Anything else for the turn? Can still attack with the Protesters as well. Opponent's not going to bother. So let's opt. Sire should be decent. Put an Archway. So their opponent's probably holding another reinforcements that they wanted to cast here with the extra mana. So I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana total. So I'm a little bit short of Ugin into Sire. Let's maybe see what's on top with the Surveil. Just an island. Definitely has to be Ugin here. Exile the Protesters. And then I can still make mana to archive the Divide Guide. And that'll limit what they can do.
Fate flows as easily as water.
So I can go to my second main phase to let the floating mana go away.
To this conflict.
Play Archive.
The essence of this
Exile Guide. Voyager's next on our list.
one step in the stratagem.
And then UFO can block and still put in Adventures in. Opponent's not far from waterbending with Aang as well, so that's potentially a concern. For now, backup Guide makes sense. Another Protectors. At least it doesn't have haste, so can't immediately tap for mana. But yeah, our opponent could waterbend with Aang. Decides to attack. So Ugin is still gonna fall, unfortunately. Probably still gonna sack Archive since I don't need the extra mana. Okay. Well, we have bought ourselves a lot of extra time. Sire may not be good enough long term, but maybe it's a bit of a speed bump for them. Ring can also tap down Aang if they try and waterbend it, but yeah, I don't think I'll have the mana for that now. So let's just play Sire. And then Iron Crag into Tome, or I can save some of these cheap colorless spells to trigger Ugin later. I guess that's fine too. Just play Tome and pass. And does our opponent's deck have a way to remove the Sire? Another Ang could of course airbend it, but that's only a temporary solution. So our opponent's just gonna draw more cards and gain more life. Another reinforcements. Maybe the next time I find an Ugin, I need to back it up with an Aetherize to protect it. Although that's going to be tricky to set up. Opponent is attacking. So do they have a solution for Sire? Another Ang. Okay. They still need to pay the ward, and I get to recast Sire for 2 mana. Got a Scry with Tome, not sure if I'm gonna upkeep Scry as well. Another Tome, feels a little slow here. I'll just take my draw step. Oh, there's Aetherize. Okay, so step 1, draw with Tome. Find another Aetherize, okay. So I can play Sire and then still have a pretty well disguised Aetherize available. We'll have to watch out for another Ang, maybe countering it or airbending it. Because yeah, I'm a mana short of casting it and then casting it again for 2 mana because I don't have an actual island in play. Otherwise, if they Ang Aetherize, I can just play it again at instant speed for 2 mana. So maybe getting punished for holding the Iron Crag. Okay, now Appa. It's gonna airbend some of their own permanents, perhaps. Who knows? The 2 reinforcements. Could have tapped them for mana first. Okay, that happens. So they have Ang available again to bounce Sire, and Ang plus Appa can also go pseudo-infinite. I mean, they still are limited by the amount of mana they have available, of course. So we'll see what they decide to do. They're just gonna airbend the Sire again. That happens. Pretty big attack. Seems like a fine opportunity to Aetherize. Get rid of all those tokens. Alright, opponent had another Ang at the ready. And yeah, as I mentioned, a mana short of casting Aetherize again. Should still survive. Barely. So the adventures in from earlier definitely kept me in the game. So now Tome can once again draw. Find a water skin. Can play it, cast Sire using its mana. Since we'll get to untap it again. And then I think I have double Aetherize up. Which matters if they have another Ang. Although I guess we would start by casting the one they know about already. Opponent goes for a big attack. I can let first strike damage happen first and then Aetherize. So I still gain 7. They also have the protectors to protect one of their creatures potentially. So a lot to consider. Now let's see here. 5, 6, 7. So they can't quite waterbend Aang here, which is something you can do at instant speed. So what makes sense to block? Maybe Appa. Although if they have another Aang, they're happy to bounce Appa. So it's hard to tell really. But yeah, let's get rid of Appa. And then I can block here as well. Let first strike damage happen. Opponent had another Appa anyways, so now I don't get to gain the life. Fair enough. Their opponent's not bouncing anything. So I guess I'm still forced to Aetherize anyway. Otherwise I'm dead. Probably should have done so in response. Alright, and our opponent scoops it up. That was a marathon game, but yeah, I guess our opponent doesn't have a great way to get past the Sire. And yeah, at some point we'll find Ugin to slowly start exiling their things and take over that way. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Could use an extra early ramp card. But yeah, we've got some interaction. Tong can help draw towards more lanes. And now an Iron Crag is excellent. I will opt on turn 1, since I do want to make sure I find a third land. Opponent mono green, but without any early plays. And we already have an Ugin. I don't think I'll need 2. So Iron Crag into Archive. That's an easy way to ramp out Ugin ahead of schedule. Now a Chocobo, so maybe a landfall deck after all. That's fine, I've got an Archive into a Maze Mind Tome. Put an Upkeep Stop in case I decide to scry. So next turn I have access to 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, so I guess I still need to find an untapped land to actually cast Ugin. Chocobo immediately picks up 2 counters. And another Traveling Chocobo. Alright, so we've got our work cut out for us. Take 3. UFO, a little late to the party. If I already had an extra land in hand, I would keep it as a cheap way to trigger Ugin. As is, I need to prioritize actually finding an extra land here. Another UFO, once again to the bottom. And a water skin, so we did not get there. I will probably use an authorized exit to buy myself a bit of time. And then I think I still play the water skin to guarantee the mana for Ugin next turn. Although it would be another way to exile something if we add 3 colorless. So can exit now, and then exit a second time. Bouncing probably one of the Traveling Chocobos, and then I might end up bouncing Sass Chocobo as well. Now I don't need Archway anymore. Traveling Chocobo is back. That happens. So if they go all in on Sass Chocobo, I'll bounce it as well. Hoping there's no Snakeskin Veil, I guess, which could still be a concern. And goes to attacks, no blocks. They had the Veil, so I also don't get to Surveil. Fall to 7. But now I do get to cast Ugin, although is Ugin good enough? It may not be. Can exile Sass Chocobo, assuming there's no second Snakeskin Veil. And then I probably gain 3 and draw a card, so I don't die to another pump spell. And then Ugin should live. Alright, so we might be slowly turning the corner. Double Sire in hand.
My plan bears fruit.
Something like Mossborn Hydra could still get larger than Sire pretty quickly with triple Traveling Chocobo. So that's still a threat. I'm debating whether I should scry with Maze Mind Tome end of turn. Probably okay to do so. And a Tifa. Well, that's very deadly with all the extra landfall triggers they could generate. Planetarium, that's a card. Probably worth keeping, although I'm not going to cast it over Sire. So Ugin can make mana, play Archive, and then still play Sire. Exiling Tifa. Although Sire does have First Strike, so unless they pump Tifa's toughness, they still can't attack with it. So I guess I'm fine taking out the Chocobos. Play Sire. Pass a turn. And now with Waterskin untapping, I can once again draw with Tome, which can also now gain 4 life. There's a Mossborn Hydra, that's the real threat. With Planetarium, I can maybe even cast a colorless spell in the opponent's turn to target the Hydra with Ugin's ability. Because if they have another Snakeskin in hand, they can protect from Ugin in my turn. So then I'll need another bounce spell or colorless spell to deal with the Hydra in the opponent's turn. But yeah, imagine this with triple Chocobo instead of just 1. Is this a 5 spell? That would be game over potentially. Wow, Bushwhack. Yeah, that makes some amount of sense. So I gain 7 from the fight. And then 4 more from Tome. But that's not enough to beat Tifa. So I guess I should have exiled Tifa after all. That's unfortunate. Wasn't thinking of Bushwhack. But I guess they also needed the Hydra to go with it, otherwise Tifa would have still died in the fight. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have Planetarium, maybe missing some ramp, but I can maybe find some with Opt and the Surveil from Exit. So I'll start with Islands. Could have also curved Pylons into Archway, which would let us Surveil twice. Passage on green, and a Pollinator, so this is kind of the blue-green Badger Mole Cub ramp deck. Trying to set up Ouroboros and maybe even a Craterhoof Behemoth. Adventures Inn is okay. Yeah, I'll need more lands. So I already have to decide if I want to prioritize the extra Surveil or the extra life gain. Eventually I'll want to find an Ugin. Would be nice to find some 4 mana ramp card here. So I think I do Surveil. Say no to the Pylons. Play Tome. And then next turn I can maybe unauthorized exit, play Archway. At least I didn't have a turn 2 Cub, but yeah, Druneth can still trigger if they have another 1-drop. So they get a bunch of Pollinators. I will scry. Don't need another Planetarium. For now, take my draw. UFO isn't bad. So I can just play the UFO, and that'll give me more mana next turn. Sure. So I'm not interacting a whole lot with my opponent yet. Do I keep Starforge? So next turn I can play a land, put in a land with UFO, go up to 5 mana. I think I still prefer just being able to cast a ramp spell next turn. But yeah, opponent could already cast an Ouroboros here, which is something I'll definitely need to bounce. Just a Lanor Elves and a Siren, so they're not triggering Drunith this turn. Unless there's another 2-drop waiting in the wings. Paw Patch with Offspring, fair enough. So they're going very wide. They have 6-7 mana, so yeah, Craterhoof is definitely a real possibility. Say no to the islands. Take my draw. Find a pylons anyway. Sure, I can play it now. Archive a little late to the party, so had I maybe scryed an upkeep, I could have drawn into it. Now, do I still keep it on top? At this point it might be too late, and I'm fine just with an extra land. And then I can draw with Tome, and then still unauthorized exit. Can do that in the opponent's turn as well. If Ouroboros shows up, I can bounce it. Finding Aetherized to bounce all their creatures would be nice. Explore into a land. And another Siren, that's fine. We are going to start taking a bit of chip damage here. Opponent's got all the mana they'll ever need. Because now with the exit, I would also trigger the recruit, so it doesn't necessarily benefit me all that much. Alright, they found Ouroboros. So next turn it's coming down. Now, interestingly, what I could also do is block a recruit, activate UFO to put in a town, and then activate to get up to 1 power to eat a recruit. That might be better than drawing with Tome here. I guess I can still draw with Tome anyways. Find a second town, and now Ugin. Alright. So now the question is, can I afford to tap out for an Ugin? If I activate UFO, I can put in an extra land. I would have Ugin in play, but then Ouroboros is going to pump all their stuff. So I could also put in Sire, maybe that's the play. Yeah, you know what? Put in the lands, play Sire. Waterskin isn't bad, because I can cast it after I cast Ugin. So I should be able to survive the attack. Opponent's kind of locked into playing Ouroboros. And then Ugin can get rid of it without having to mess around with a bounce spell. Can still gain 4 life with Tome at instant speed. Opponent's doing some math here, deciding whether or not it's worth it to attack. Would not mind seeing an attack, because it also allows me to attack back with Sire without our opponent having any good blocks. Alright, opponent's sending. So this triggers when you become the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls. So I might want to take that out first. How much damage am I taking here? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, plus another 3. So I can easily survive this. Block the token. And let first rank damage happen. So I'm at 24. Yeah, I should be fine. Take my turn. Step 1 attack. Cast Ugin. That's gone. Make some mana. Play Water Skin. Exile Druneth, I think. And then pass a turn. Possible they can finish off Ugin, but then we still have Planetarium to try and take over. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a fine hand. Start with Adventures in. Get a bit more intel on what the opponent's playing before we decide what to do with the Surveil. Alright, I see. So maybe a white aggro deck, could be Angels, or maybe just a Pixie deck bouncing Inquisitor over and over. I guess I'll make my opt cost 2. That shouldn't slow me down too much. Because yeah, I didn't necessarily want to exile a land, because then I cannot put it in play with a UFO anymore. And we're still on track to cast turn 3 Hedron Archive. Okay, so got a main phase activates. And then with a land I can cast Ugin. So yeah, this is kind of the mono-white aura deck with a bunch of enchantment synergy. So bounce spells should be good. Ugin should be good too. Can they protect it? They cannot. Well, an early Ugin's probably going to run away with the game now. They will have Sheltered by Ghost to maybe get rid of it, but we have the bounce spell to get it back. Another Weaver. And another one, alright. If you've got Arachnophobia, this may not be the game for you. Can still put in a land. And more colorless spells is perfect. So, if I want to play it extra safe, I can maybe make mana with Ugin. Although drawing still seems better, can maybe draw into a land. Just to keep up unauthorized exits. So what do I need to get rid of? Probably just an Inquisitor. Pass a turn. They get to give one of their creatures double strike. But yeah, that's not going to be good enough to get past the Sire. So yeah, we get to see this mono-blue Planetarium ramp deck in action. And yeah, I was quite impressed by what Planetarium is capable of, giving us a ton of free card advantage and card selection. And there's even a lot of ways to trigger the Planetarium for free outside of its own ability, so we can get the most out of it using it both in our turn and the opponent's turn as well. Now, of course, we do need to have a bit of a balance between enough early game ramp cards and interaction, as well as enough late game threats that will benefit the most from getting cast for free. If we don't get that balance right, then the deck is maybe not going to quite function according to plan. But that's also the type of thing that could easily improve with the simple addition of modal dual-face lands in a future standard expansion, because now all of a sudden the spell density of the deck goes way up, and then we can still use those cards as land drops, but now if we find them with the Planetarium, we'll have more spells that can maybe help us take over. Cycling cards can also be very good, since we can maybe cycle them on the cheap, and then there's still expensive spells that we can cast with the Planetarium for free. So those are the types of synergies we want to be on the lookout for in future expansions, but for now this seems to work out quite well. So yeah, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.